first time Elaine Crawford drove her SUV onto my front lawn, I asked her nicely to move it. The 11th time I stopped asking. And the 60 seconds of security footage that came after that ended her 8-year reign as president of our Homeowners Association. My name is Caleb Mercer. I was 43 then, and I lived in Hawthorne Ridge, a quiet neighborhood outside Knoxville, Tennessee. The kind of place with brick mailboxes, trimmed hedges, and enough rules to make you wonder whether your front porch technically belonged to you. I had bought my house 4 years earlier, a 2-story colonial on a corner lot with a wide patch of zoysia grass I had spent more time caring for than I would admit. After long days reviewing drainage plans, mowing that yard was my therapy. Elaine lived 2 houses down. She was in her late 50s, always dressed like she had somewhere important to be, and she drove a pearl-white Lincoln Navigator that looked freshly detailed even in the rain. For 8 years, she had run the HOA like a private government. People joked about it, but quietly. Elaine had a talent for finding violations right after someone disagreed with her. Leave a trash bin out too long, $50. Paint your shutters the wrong gray, hearing notice. Put a basketball hoop near the driveway, threat of a lien. Most neighbors kept their heads down because fighting her seemed harder than paying. My trouble started after the county narrowed our street during a drainage upgrade. One Tuesday afternoon, I came home and found Elaine's Navigator halfway across my lawn, both passenger side tires sunk into wet soil. I walked to her house and knocked. She came out wearing sunglasses even though the sun was going down. "Caleb," she said like I had interrupted surgery, "the street is too narrow now. I had board members over. Your yard was the only practical option." I looked at the tracks cutting through the grass and said, "It is not an option. It is my property." She smiled, not kindly. "It is grass. It grows back." That sentence stayed with me because it told me exactly how she saw the world. Her convenience was permanent. Everyone else's boundaries were temporary. I asked her not to do it again. She said she would keep it in mind. 3 days later, she did it again, then again the following week. Each time I took pictures, sent polite messages, and got shorter replies. Noted. Understood. Once, nothing at all. By the 6th incident, water pooled in the ruts after every rain. I sent a formal complaint to the HOA board with photographs, dates, and a repair estimate. 2 weeks later, I received a letter saying the matter was a private dispute between neighbors and outside the HOA's authority. It was signed by the board secretary, but the language sounded exactly like Elaine. That was when I understood the real problem. I was not asking the HOA to stop Elaine. I was asking Elaine to stop Elaine. I was asking Elaine to stop Elaine. By winter, a landscaper quoted me $900 to repair the damage. I mailed Elaine the estimate. Her response came from an attorney denying she had caused anything and warning me that visible changes to my yard required architectural approval. I read that letter 3 times, feeling something inside me go very still. She destroyed my lawn, denied it, then threatened to fine me if I fixed it wrong. That night, I opened a folder on my laptop, named it Crawford, and started saving everything. For the next 3 weeks, I did something Elaine had never expected me to do. I read every page of the Hawthorne Ridge Covenanters, all 52 of them, including the amendments, the architectural guidelines, and the sections written in the kind of legal language that seems designed to make ordinary people give up halfway through the second paragraph. I did not give up. I sat at my kitchen table every night with a yellow marker, a legal pad, and enough coffee to make sleep feel optional. On page 34, I found it. A security exemption that allowed homeowners to install barriers, lighting, cameras, and other protective structures without standard architectural approval as long as they complied with county code and stayed inside the property line. I read that section 5 times, then called my friend Owen Price, a structural engineer I had worked with on a warehouse project years earlier. When I explained the situation, he was quiet for a few seconds, then laughed so hard I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "How many posts are we talking about?" he asked. I looked out the window at the dead strip of grass along the curb and said, "Enough that she gets the message." We settled on 12 steel bollards, 4 inches thick, 34 inches above ground, each anchored into a reinforced concrete footing deep enough to stop a full-sized SUV without moving. I also called the county planning office, confirmed the setback requirements, ordered a survey of the front corner of my lot, and submitted a site plan. The permit was approved 6 days later. While all that was happening, Elaine parked on my lawn 2 more times. I watched from my kitchen window the second time, coffee in hand, as she climbed out of the Navigator and glanced toward my house like she was daring me to come outside. I did not. I took a picture, logged the time, and went back to work. The old me would have confronted her. The new me understood that some people hear your words as weakness, but they understand concrete perfectly. The installation happened on a cold Saturday morning in early March. Owen arrived before sunrise with an auger, a laser level, and a box of biscuits from a gas station that had no business making food that good. We marked 12 spots along the edge of the lawn, each one safely inside my property line. By 8 o'clock, the yard looked like someone had laid out targets for an artillery crew. The first foot of soil came up easily, then we hit Tennessee clay, thick, red, and stubborn enough to make a grown man reconsider every decision that had led him there. Owen leaned on the auger and said, "You know, normal people buy a fence." I wiped mud from my face and told him, "Normal people have normal HOA presidents." By mid-afternoon, the holes were ready, the rebar cages were set, and 12 matte black steel posts stood in a straight line behind the curb. Each one was buried in nearly 500 pounds of concrete. I hired a local landscaper named Rosa Martinez to soften the look with dwarf hollies, riverstone, and low amber lights. By Sunday evening, the whole thing looked polished, almost elegant, like something installed outside a high-end office building, but underneath the landscaping was enough steel and concrete to stop Elaine's Lincoln like it had hit the side of a bank. I stood on a porch with Owen and looked at it in the fading light. "She is going to lose her mind," he said. "Probably," I told him, "but she will have to do it from the street." I knew better than to think the posts alone would end it, so I prepared for the fight that would follow. I organized every photograph, every message, every letter, every repair estimate, and every delivery receipt into a binder. I included the survey, the permit, the county code, the security exemption, and the engineering specifications. Then I installed a high-definition camera under the porch eave, angled directly at the curb and the new bollards. Finally, I called a property attorney named Hannah Brooks, a woman with a calm voice and the unsettling habit of finishing your legal argument before you did. She reviewed the documents and said, "Your installation is clean. She may still challenge it, but she will not win." I asked why Elaine would challenge something she could not win. Hannah gave a little sigh and said, "Because people who have held power too long confuse obedience with legality." 4 days later, while I was at work, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the camera feed and saw the pearl white Navigator pull up in front of my house. Elaine eased forward, turned the wheel toward the grass, and followed the exact path she had taken nearly a dozen times before. The right front tire climbed the curb, the bumper touched the first bollard, and the entire SUV stopped. The post did not bend. It did not shake. It simply stood there. Elaine backed up, turned a little sharper, and tried again. This time the bumper scraped the second post with a slow, ugly sound that came clearly through the camera microphone. She sat behind the wheel for almost half a minute, staring at the line of black steel like it had personally insulted her, then backed into the street and drove away. I replayed the footage 3 times, not because I enjoyed watching her car get scratched, although I will admit I did not hate it, but because there was something deeply satisfying about seeing a boundary finally behave like a boundary. When I got home that evening, a violation notice was taped to my front door. $500 for an unauthorized exterior structure plus $100 for every day the bollards remained. Elaine had signed it herself. I scanned the notice and sent it herself. 2 hours later, she emailed the board a formal response citing the security exemption, the county permit, the property survey, and the camera footage showing repeated vehicle trespass. She also warned that any attempt to enforce the fine would lead to claims for property damage, selective enforcement, and legal fees. 3 days later, the management company called. The violation was withdrawn. No fine, no removal order. The bollards were legal. I thought that would be the end of it, but Elaine was not the kind of person who accepted a closed door. If she could not remove the posts under the existing rules, she decided she would change the rules themselves. Elaine moved fast. Within a week, she announced a special homeowners meeting and proposed an amendment that would eliminate the security exemption entirely, meaning every barrier, camera, light, or protective structure in Hawthorne Ridge would need approval from a committee she controlled. She called it a neighborhood beautification measure. She never mentioned my lawn, her Navigator, or the video of her trying twice to drive through 12 steel posts. She did not have to. Everyone knew exactly what the amendment was about. That weekend, I mailed a letter to every homeowner in the neighborhood. Nothing angry, nothing dramatic, just the timeline, the photographs, the dismissed complaints, the legal notice, and one simple question. Why was the board trying to remove a rule that protected homeowners instead of asking why its president kept damaging private property? My phone started ringing 2 days later. People I barely knew told me stories they had kept quiet for years. An older widow named Ruth had been fined because her Christmas wreath stayed up until January 10th. A retired mechanic named Gary had been ordered to repaint his garage because Elaine disliked the shade of brown. One family had received 3 warnings over a child's portable basketball hoop, while Elaine's own nephew kept one beside her driveway for years without a single notice. That was when I realized the posts had become bigger than my yard. They had given people something solid to stand behind. The clubhouse was packed on the night of the vote. Normally, maybe a dozen people attended an HOA meeting. That evening, more than 100 homeowners filled every chair and lined the walls. Elaine sat at the front in a navy jacket with a microphone, a stack of ballots, and a little wooden gavel she loved using whenever someone spoke longer than she preferred. She read her proposal in a polished voice, talking about community values, property standards, and preserving the neighborhood's character. When she finished, Gary stood up and said, "Elaine, the neighborhood's character was doing fine until you started parking on Caleb's lawn." People laughed, then applauded. Elaine struck the gavel and ordered him to sit down. Ruth rose slowly from the second row and said, "I have lived here 21 years and I've never spoken at one of these meetings. I'm speaking now because rules should protect people, not punish whoever embarrasses the president." The room went quiet, then louder than before. A local attorney named Martin Hale asked Elaine whether my bollards were legal under the current covenanters. She tried to avoid the question, but the management representative finally confirmed that they were. Martin nodded and said, "Then this amendment is not correcting a violation, it is creating one after the fact." Elaine's face tightened. She insisted the rule was forward-looking, then admitted existing installations could be reviewed later. Someone near the back called out, "So it is punishment with better wording." That was the moment the room turned completely. The amendment failed, 38 votes in favor, 96 against. I thought it was over, but the board secretary, Thomas Reed, stood and introduced a motion of no confidence in Elaine's leadership. She declared it out of order. Martin calmly opened the bylaws and read the section allowing any homeowner to introduce a motion during a properly announced meeting. The vote happened before Elaine could regain control. 79 people voted to remove her. 27 voted to keep her. She stared at the results, placed the gavel in her purse, and walked out without saying a word. 2 months later, an audit found thousands of dollars in selectively issued fines, many aimed at residents who had challenged her. The new board refunded the money, withdrew old violations, and negotiated a settlement that covered my lawn repairs and part of my legal fees. Elaine sold her house before summer ended. One evening after the move-in truck was gone, I sat on my porch watching the amber lights glow between the steel posts while children rode bicycles around them. Ruth had started calling them the guardians. I never built them to overthrow anyone. I built them because one person refused to respect the word no. Still, people argued afterward about whether I had gone too far, whether spending thousands on steel and concrete was protection or revenge. I know where I stand, but I want to know where you stand. Was I defending my property, or did I turn a neighbor dispute into a neighborhood war? Tell me in the comments and share this story with someone who has ever had to fight an HOA that forgot who it was supposed to serve.